All right, let's just dive right in. There's this one thing, one act that can completely shatter a relationship, a couple's happiness, even who they think they are. And that's an affair. So today, we're jumping into a book that says we've been talking about this universal human drama all wrong. This is our explainer on Esther Perel's groundbreaking work, The State of Affairs. So, what's Perel's mission here? Well, what we're going to unpack is how she challenges our most deeply held beliefs about infidelity. She's basically saying we desperately need a new conversation about it, one that's more honest and, more compassionate. And look, this isn't about giving anyone a free pass, but about really understanding what affairs can teach us about modern love. And she starts with a real punch, right? This quote just lays out the core paradox immediately. It's forbidden everywhere, but it happens everywhere. That contradiction has been around as long as marriage itself, which tells you there's something really deep going on here that we usually just refuse to look at. So, what's the actual problem with how we talk about affairs? Well, according to Perel, it starts with the words we use, the stories we tell. Let's take a look at how our current conversation is just failing us. I mean, think about it. It's so common, right? So many of us have been touched by infidelity in one way or another, and yet it's still wrapped up in all the secrecy and shame. We just treat it like this simple moral failing that needs to be punished, instead of a really complex human experience we could try to understand. And this slide just perfectly shows the trap we all fall into. The whole conversation gets stuck between these two dead ends. On one side, you've got the super moralizing view. Cheaters are just bad people, end of story. And then on the other side, you get this cynical take that, monogamy is a joke anyway. Neither one of those gives us any room for nuance or for real understanding or, and this is key, for healing. So here's the bottom line. By sticking to these black and white judgmental views, we're left with a conversation that is, just like Perel says, divisive, judgmental, and short-sighted. It completely stops us from asking the bigger, tougher questions about love, desire, and what commitment even means today. Okay, so if the old way of talking is broken, what's the alternative? And this is where we get to the absolute heart of Perel's work. We need to shift our entire approach away from condemnation and toward curiosity. And here it is, the big idea, the central thesis of the whole book. Look, the point isn't to stamp good or bad on an affair. The goal is to ask why. Why do they happen? What do they actually mean to the people involved? Perel believes that by digging into those motives and meanings, we can learn these invaluable lessons that make all of our relationships stronger and more honest, not just the ones that have been rocked by an affair. Now, this point is absolutely crucial, and Perel says it over and over again. Trying to understand the why behind an affair is not the same as excusing it. It's not about letting anyone off the hook for the pain they've caused. It's about recognizing that we learn nothing by just sitting around and judging. Real understanding is what actually makes real healing possible. And this brings us to probably one of the most challenging ideas in the whole book. We all think we know why people cheat, right? The story is always that it's a symptom of a bad relationship. But Perel asks us to consider a much, much more complicated reality. Seriously, just let that question sink in for a second. It's a total game changer. We're wired to think betrayal is intensely personal, a direct attack on the partner. But what Perel found from working with thousands of couples is that, so often, the affair isn't about rejecting their partner at all. It's about something going on inside that person's own head.
Just look at these motives. It's not always about a bad marriage. Sometimes it's a search for a part of yourself you thought was gone forever. The wild teenager you never got to be. The artist you had to put on a shelf. It can be a way to feel something when you feel emotionally dead inside. So the big takeaway here is that sometimes people aren't turning away from their partner. They're turning away from the person they themselves have become.
So, if an affair happens, is that it? Is it just the end? Well, not necessarily. Perel argues that the crisis it creates, as awful and devastating as it is, can actually be a weird kind of catalyst for change. And let's be super clear, Perel is not trying to sugarcoat this. The pain of betrayal is real, it's immense. But what she's noticed is that finding out about an affair often forces couples to have the kinds of raw, honest conversations they've been avoiding for years, maybe even decades. It shatters the status quo and can, for some couples, actually lead to a stronger, more authentic relationship than they had before the crisis.
This is the powerful question she often asks couples who come to her. It totally reframes the whole idea of recovery. It's not about trying to glue the broken pieces of the old marriage back together. It's a choice. It's acknowledging, okay, that thing we had is gone, and then asking, do we want to build something brand new from the ground up together?
But here's the thing that's so fascinating. This isn't just for people who've gone through an affair. This is for all of us. Perel basically uses infidelity as a lens to look at the challenges of modern relationships in general. By daring to look at what happens when desire goes somewhere it shouldn't, we actually learn a ton about our own needs, our need for security and our need for adventure, our need for connection and our need for freedom. In her view, illicit love holds up a mirror to committed love, and it shows us all the cracks, but it also shows us where we're strong.
So what does this mean for your long-term relationship? Well, the lessons are huge. Realizing your partner is a separate person you don't own can shake you out of taking them for granted. Staying curious about them, and about yourself, is maybe the best defense against that feeling of domestic deadness that can creep in. It's about actively choosing to keep things alive, not just assuming the fire will keep burning on its own.
So we end with the question that Perel really wants us all to sit with. This isn't about making our partners feel insecure. It's about looking at what makes affairs so alluring. That energy, that novelty, that intense attention. And then we have to ask ourselves, how can we invite some of that vitality, that aliveness, back inside the walls of our own commitments? That is a question really worth thinking about.